Hello you beautiful, beautiful, beautiful people. Welcome into another DBD video here. This one, we are going to be talking about killers I would like to see added to the game, but with a twist. There are not going to be anybody listed here. That's not English. There are not going to be anybody. There is not going to be anybody listed here that is very common for these types of lists. So there's no Candyman, there's no Pennywise, there's no Jason, there's none of that. We're not going for any of the obvious picks. I wanted to go outside of the box, and I wanted to pick some really high quality, lesser known choices. Some people that I think make sense, but maybe you really haven't thought of them. Maybe you think they don't really fit for DBD, and I'm gonna make the case for why I think they do. Instead of my usual list, we're not doing 10, we're not doing 5, we're doing 3. Because I didn't want to artificially stretch this and add killers I wasn't as passionate about. So we're just doing 3 that I think are really cool ideas. If at some point in the future I think of more that I would like to do, because I had some I was on the fence about and I thought, you know what, no, let's sit, let's ruminate, let's think on these. And maybe in the future I'll consider adding them to a video kind of like this, a follow-up. But for now, we're just going to do 3 killers Dead by Daylight should add to the game. Starting off with number 1, we have Cerberus. Behavior devs have said in the past that they have no interest in adding non-anthropomorphic characters, but right out of the gate, I'm gonna call their bluff on that one. In the past, they've also said things like they don't intend to add a clown killer, and thankfully, they walked that one back within 2 years of the game existing, and now we have my main, the clown. And the thing is, look, I don't blame them for misleading or even outright lying to the player base when it comes to what they plan to add in the future. If they told us that they were going to add one concept or the other at some point, or that they'd like to add that at some point, every future chapter would be rumored to be that thing. Every video hyping up, oh, what could chapter so-and-so be? It'd be that thing. Everybody's just going to keep mentioning it. I mean, I think back to some of the times that something like that has happened. So, Tony Todd, who plays Candyman, followed Dead by Daylight on Twitter, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's happening. And it became this big thing where, every chapter was going to be Candyman. And as of the time of recording, not only has Candyman not been added, but the next chapter has already been confirmed to not be Candyman. Way back, Matthew McCote said that he would be very excited to add Pennywise to the game, and that's kind of like a dream chapter for him. So every time we start talking about what the next chapter will be, there's always that debate of, well, what if it's Pennywise? What if it's finally that? And, on that note, Rari the Lynx's amazing concept trailer that they did for Pennywise. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. I'll link it in the description below. But, yeah, make it happen, Behavior. This one's an easy layup. I mean, everything, the map, the power, it's all been done for you. Just work out a deal with that channel and see if you can't get that figured out. As for Cerberus, I picked this one. I picked this character over non-human choices for a few different reasons. Firstly, Cerberus is a recognizable figure to the outside world. There's no need to explain who or what Cerberus is. Most people know that Cerberus is the 3-headed dog that guards the gates of hell. Yeah, in Greek mythology, of course. In addition to that, Cerberus just looks amazing. Cerberus looks incredible. No matter how a given artist chooses to interpret the beast, I've seen renditions of Cerberus that are made to look like Dobermans, Rottweilers, Pit Bulls. Some are just downright monsters. No matter what Behavior chooses to make this Greek legend look like, it's going to be absolutely terrifying. I mean, can you imagine being chased by a giant 3-headed dog? I know fear of dogs is a massive thing for a lot of people. For as much as we talk about them as man's best friend, some people are terrified of dogs. And I think that this would serve to those people the same thing that, like me, as somebody who suffers from colorophobia, which I say suffers like it's some kind of victim thing. I don't trust clowns. I think they're creepy, and therefore, the clown really speaks to me in that way. Somebody afraid of dogs would probably find something very similar with Cerberus. It'd be terrifying, but even if you're not afraid of dogs, wow, that'd be very, very scary. As far as powers go, I'm at a bit of a loss. Ideally, Cerberus would have high mobility, what with being a dog and all, but that's about all I'm bringing to the table here. The same goes for the Survivor. I really have no idea who would be packaged with this killer, because there's not really, there's not like one Greek legend that it's like, oh, this is the one that goes with Cerberus, because Cerberus was just kind of an existing thing in Greek mythology. It wasn't, in the same way that certain legends were packaged with other legends, and you got to buy both figures to get the pack. Ideally, Behavior would just create a character who lived in ancient Greece and was taken by the entity. After all, we know from characters like Oni and Plague that the entity has been at this for a long while. As for the map, I think there are 2 options. They could make a hell map, but I'd rather see something in that vein reserved for a demon or devil character. Instead, I would love to see Daedalus's Labyrinth introduced as a map. I know the Labyrinth is much more closely associated with the Minotaur, but we already have a Minotaur in the game with the legendary Oni skin, so that's kind of out the window, and I really think the Labyrinth would offer real creativity on the part of behavior. They would have so much they could try with that, and I think that'd be really, really cool. Lastly, this killer would be great for the sheer number of skins it could introduce to the game. We already mentioned Dobermans and Rottweilers, but why stop there? Sell legendary skins that turn Cerberus into a wolf, tiger, or some other four-legged beast. Or behavior could take a different approach and add a comedic skin, a comedic skin, something like an oversized Chihuahua or something like that, or maybe like a big goofy golden retriever, just something kind of funny. You know, I think back to the video game Smite does a lot of comedic skins, and actually has Cerberus in it. now that I put two and two together there, and the comedic skins are a big hit for them, so I actually wouldn't mind it. I know behavior leans into the serious side of things, but clearly from the Legion Rabbit skins, they are not entirely opposed to some comedic skins, and I think you would have that opportunity with Cerberus. But look, the options with this killer would be limitless, and if behavior does choose to break their rule about bipedal killers only, I really hope they consider Cerberus first. Next up, we have number 2, the Nazgul. Now, before you say it, I realize a game as bloody as Dead by Daylight doesn't quite fit the relatively clean, conservative world of Middle-earth. Despite this, I don't think the Nazgul is as unnatural a fit as it may first appear. Let me explain that real quick. So, the world of Middle-earth has never been shy about its violence, right? Orcs, dragons, trolls, goblins, wizards, Orokai, giant spiders, Balrogs, and Dark Lords all come together to make Middle-earth a place of great peril, one that can only go so long between tragedies. Most chilling amongst the malevolent forces of Middle-earth are the Nazgul, 9 fallen kings who succumb to greed, that is, and now serve Sauron for the rest of time. In the films and the novels, both, the Nazgul are hunters at heart. They seek the ring with singular purpose and serve their master without question. If you change their goal to seeking survivors and switch their master to the entity, they suddenly begin to make a lot more sense as potential killers. As a bit of housekeeping, I'd like to clarify that my ideal chapter here would be a non-specified Nazgul, not the Witch King of Angmar. That being said, there would certainly need to be legendary skins that change the Nazgul into the Witch King, Sauron, Mouth of Sauron, and, if we're lucky, an Orokai Berserker. Oh man, I really want to swing one of those giant Berserker swords. As for the map and the survivor, things get a little more interesting there. What I would ideally like to see would be either just a Middle-earth realm where you can go to different places, you know, because Dead by Daylight has maps that are specific and realms that are like clusters of maps that are all themed similarly. So for this one, I would like a Middle-earth realm, or if we have to specify a little more, maybe we do something cool like a Gondor realm, so you could have a map on the Pelennor Fields and in Minas Tirith. I mean, there are all kinds of options here. There are no shortage of iconic locations in Middle-earth if they chose to do something like that, and if they wanted something that they already know fits into a video game, they could get into contact with WB Games and start talking about, okay, well, what did you do for, you know, Shadow of Mordor and all that? Like, what worked for that? And they could go from there. For the character, there are quite a few iconic characters in Lord of the Rings, but it is kind of interesting, right? It's kind of interesting trying to figure out who the character is, because it can't be Gandalf, that just doesn't feel right. It can't be a Hobbit, because that would presumably be an advantage for any kind of survivor. To be a shorter survivor would actually benefit them greatly, especially at things like mid-sized loops, so I think the Hobbits are out the window. But then, you go to the main cast, and it's like, can you really see somebody like Aragorn or Legolas running away? Not especially, no, but at the same time you could say, you know, Ash versus Evil Dead. You don't really think of Ash as somebody who would run away. Ash is definitely a fighter, and yet, you know, here he is running away. So I think you could get a little more loose with that one. And at the end of the day, if you had to, you could always go back and pick a character from the video games. So you do have options there, or it could just, you know, not have a survivor. That's not something that's completely unheard of. And again, they said they were done with the little paragraphs and they were only going to do full chapters, but since announcing that, they have already done paragraphs. So, you know, I don't really know, but I do think this would be a really cool addition to the game. As far as power is concerned, I have no idea. I have even less idea than I had for Cerberus. What do you have the Nazgul do? I don't really know. I really don't. But I think it would be cool if you introduced the ring in some kind of way so that survivors could pick it up like they do the box. But, you know, I don't know how you could make it a strong enough power. Obviously, when Frodo or anyone puts on the ring, the Nazgul see where he is, they know where he is, and he's kind of in their realm. You can't really just make it where, when they pick up the ring, it makes it where you see them, because that's a pretty weak power. But, you know, I think it's a starting point, right? We can start from there and workshop into something a little more usable, a little more pleasant. But anyway, that's going to do it for the Nazgul. That's my entire idea there. I am a big Lord of the Rings nerd, a big Tolkien nerd, and I would love to see this. And with the new Amazon Lord of the Rings series, I don't think it's impossible. I don't think it's likely. None of these are going to be likely on this list, but I don't think it's impossible. And lastly, at number 3, the one that I most want to see out of all of these is the Great Sleeper, Cthulhu, who actually I think it's pronounced Cthulhu, but I don't want to get ridiculed in the comments for, you don't even know how to say it. Do you not see the T's there? So we'll call him Cthulhu just for the sake of that. This one, to me, feels like such a slam dunk, home run. I can't imagine why they wouldn't do it at some point. Cthulhu is a widely recognizable character. This is one of the great modern myths. The Great Sleeper, Cthulhu, one of the great old ones. I mean, this writes itself. This would be a fantastic addition to the game. And unlike the other 2 entries in this one, I actually have a pretty cool, at least starting point for the idea for Cthulhu. So obviously Cthulhu's whole thing is madness. If you stare Cthulhu in the eyes, you go mad. And look, before anybody says it, yes, we already have a killer in the game who is, I mean, the chapter for Doctor is literally called Spark of Madness. It's all about madness. However, I want to take this a little bit of a different direction, right? So if the whole concept is not by being around Cthulhu, but by looking at him, you go insane, I think the natural thing to do there is make it just that. If you look at Cthulhu, you start to go insane. I want to discourage people from looking behind them while they run, because bad players already don't do that, right? Bad players already don't look behind them while they run, but good players are very skilled at looking behind them while they run. And I like the thought of a killer who forces you to play the game a little bit differently, who forces you to not be so confident in your chases. I like the thought of mixing up the system that some think has gone a little stale, and I'm kind of inclined to agree. I think that right now we have so many killers who are all really starting to function kind of the same way. It would be cool if we could come up with a novel concept for a killer. And I do think it'd be really cool if Cthulhu, if he had some kind of power where the longer you look at him, the more at a disadvantage you're going to become, you know. And I think it would also be cool, I don't know if this is realistic at all, if this is a thing they would ever consider doing, but maybe give him, instead of a red stain, give him like a purple stain, and make it extra noticeable or something. I mean, you need something to compensate for the fact that you can't look at him, right? As far as the logistical aspects of this, I've tried to think that through. I don't want it to be where, like, you know, it's not Medusa, like you look at her and you turn to stone, right? This needs to be a thing where in a dire situation, you can look at him. I think it needs to be kind of like Ghostface, right? So Ghostface has a system, in case you didn't know, where if he's on the edge of your screen, you don't expose him, but if he's in the middle, you do. And that, at least ideally, I know that that is kind of unreliable and doesn't always work super well, but that's the general thought process, right? Is that if you have him in the center of your screen, that's when you can expose him. So I want to do it the other way, where the closer to the center of your screen Cthulhu is, the more that he's going to charge whatever power he has. And I think he would be cool to be a killer, kind of in the vein of Myers, who is consistently charging and getting stronger. Somebody like Oni, somewhere like that, you know. As far as survivors are concerned, this one I'm pretty passionate about not having a set survivor, in the sense of, don't go to the original short story, The Call of Cthulhu. Don't use the video game Call of Cthulhu. Don't use Kristen Stewart from Underwater. I don't want any of those. I don't want a licensed character. I want this to be an original chapter, because, in case you didn't know this, Cthulhu is public domain. Anybody can use Cthulhu. You do not have to acquire the rights to Cthulhu. You have them. You, listening to this, you have the rights to Cthulhu. You can go write a Cthulhu story and not have to ask anybody for permission. This widely recognizable, iconic character is free. So what I would like them to do is come up with an original character to go along with Cthulhu. Maybe one loosely inspired by the character from the short story, whose name I can't remember because I read it quite a while ago. But I think that would be the ideal way to do it, because that way you could get a lot more skins without having to ask, a studio if it's all right or not. As for the map, I think this one is pretty simple. I want some kind of underwater sanctum. I want a dark, eerie map. I realize that can easily be botched. I realize there are ways that could get really negative really quickly, but I do think that the potential is there to make something really, really cool. Ideally something where you can see other Lovecraftian monsters, either somewhere in the distance or something like that, because obviously Lovecraft's works, the first controversy was a figure, as he was, as a person. His works were absolutely incredible, and there's a reason that so many consider him the father of cosmic horror. But anyway, that's pretty much it for my Cthulhu chapter. This is the one I want the most. I think this would be so very cool. Obviously, there are some things, they would have to shrink him down. He couldn't be a giant. And there would be the lore questions of why Cthulhu is serving the entity when Cthulhu is himself a god. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Again, Cthulhu is also one who's in Smite, which is not a game I really play. I played it a few times, and I played as Cthulhu almost exclusively. But, why is he in that battleground fighting all the other gods, right? Like, video games can be kind of silly like that, so who really cares? I just think Cthulhu would be really good. But that's going to do it for me. That is my list. Cerberus, the Nazgul, and Cthulhu. Let me know down below if you like, hate, or, feel any other way about these ideas. And do you have a character that you're like, hey, I never hear people talking about this character being added to DBD, but I would love it if they were, because that's what this list was meant to be. I do hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, I've been Das Food. Bye, friends.